talks in relation to the ESG and corporate compliance, a dynamic and evolving area of law in today's sustainability-driven world. So today we welcome you to the stage. We have Elena from Legal Counsel at Montevento, Netherlands BV. Yes. Everyone welcome her. We also have the panellists. We have Makola. She's partner, head of investments, Loranges in Luxembourg. We have Abrar, partner. Hello. We have partner Dr. Mohammed Alohana and partners for Saudi Arabia. We have Noel, Senior Legal Counsel for Netherlands.
Yeah, that's me.
And finally, we have Samit. We have VP and Group Head Legal for WLF Limited from India. Give them a warm welcome. I think we have one more, don't we?
That's me.
And finally, we have Ayuk Boezema from Officer SBR Nexus Netherlands. Please welcome them warmly for their panel. One person's not here.
Yeah, one person is
Yeah, one person is missing.
No worries. We'll try and find him.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion this afternoon regarding ESG and compliance. We're living in a time when environmental, social, and governmental issues are central to how companies operate, how investors are making their decisions, and how regulators enforce accountability. ESG has evolved from voluntary framework to become a strategic imperative, often accompanied with a growing web of regulations and stakeholders' expectations. Today we brought this discussion to the experts from different fields: operational, legal, compliance. Our experts will give you an outstanding inputs on this particular topic. I'm happy to share the floor with them. So, the first panelist, now, yes?
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Elena. Thank you so much to be here. My name is Noël Oulat Abdelkrim. I'm from Holland, originally from Morocco, and I'm honored to speak at World Lawyers Forum today about a topic that's transforming not only business but also the legal profession. I'm a legal counsel at SIF for 3 years. I'm a former lawyer, and I'm happy to talk to you today about this topic. First, I wanted to start with a question. Who already faced some ESG-related compliance issues in practice? Nobody. Well, I'm glad. Let's start with the meaning of ESG. We heard it already before today, and I can imagine that not everybody knows the definition of ESG. ESG is an acronym of Environmental Social Governance. It's a set of aspects used to assess an organization business practice and performance on many ethical and sustainable issues. The E are issues, factors related to companies' impact on the environment, such as energy efficiency, green steel and waste management. The S are aspects related to a company's impact on people, like labor practices, human rights, supply chain responsibility. The G stands for factors related to a company's internal management and oversight, like executive compensation, shareholder rights, and anti-corruption measures and transparency. To who does ESG applies to? I had a really nice PowerPoint presentation, but that's fine. It's fine. I will do it like that. Yes. It applies to large companies within the EU. The CSRD, I will tell you about this acronym later, applies to large companies in the EU and non-EU with significant operations in the EU. The criteria is to have more than 250 employees, 40 million turnover, or 20 million balance sheets. For multinationals, if the revenues are above 150 million and at least one subsidiary or branch in the EU. Then we have the CSDDD. I'll talk about it later. This applies to suppliers and subcontractors. So for example, if a company is a large company, they need to apply the CSRD to their company and they have contracts with their suppliers or subcontractors, they indirectly are affected. That means that also smaller companies, the CSDDD is applied to. So why now? There's a new EU legislation, the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and the CSDDD. It's about the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. It's for investors and shareholders demands transparency from companies. There's a pressure from society, from customers, employees, and NGOs. ESG is not optional anymore, it's a strategic necessity. This brings us to the legal opportunities and challenges companies face. So the opportunities are, we are having access to new markets, it's an employer's branding, and it is a competitive advantage against the rest of the world. The legal challenges and risks are greenwashing risk, so a claim of climate neutral or sustainable can quickly lead to lawsuits if not backed by facts. There's a big board liability. Directors can be held accountable if ESG risks are ignored in governance and risk management. The contracts. Supply chain due diligence creates complex liability clauses with cascading effects. And the last one is the global inconsistency. ESG rules differ across jurisdictions, a challenge for multinationals, because there's no consistency yet. And Palash, I don't see him anymore, he already mentioned it before. So where do lawyers come in? What is the role of lawyers and legal counsels? The lawyers are bridge builders between regulation and business strategy. Advising boards on ESG is not only as a business issue, but as a legal duty. Embedding ESG into codes of conduct, compliance programs, and internal controls. Drafting contracts with ESG clause and monitoring enforcement in supply chains. Balancing transparency with legal risks. Avoiding greenwashing while meeting the disclosures requirements. I think the future is that law firms will develop more ESG practices and general counsels will drive corporate strategy. So if we are talking about CIF Netherlands, maybe you don't know what CIF does, I already explained it to some of you. We are making the foundations of the wind turbines on sea, so we only do the foundations offshore, so we only make the monopile here in Holland. And we're having a lot of subcontractors and suppliers, and we're meeting circularity for CO2 targets. We have a lot of suppliers and we have contracts underlying. So ESG is very important. ESG clauses we needed in procurement contracts. Sanctions for non-compliance. If a supplier or a subcontractor does not supply with our code of conduct, we have some underlying grounds, and the worst case is termination of the contract. We have audits and reporting obligations included in supplier agreements. Regarding the CSRD, CIF already does clear reporting, also on zero waste, on CO2 neutrality and wind energy self-sufficiency. If we're looking at the CSRD, requires sustainability data to be auditable and transparent. So the lawyer's role is to ensure that sustainability claims are backed by evidence and advice on structuring the reporting process. Regarding the CSDDD, CIF collaborates with Dillinger. Dillinger is a steel supplier in Germany, and we are collaborate with them for circular steel, and we have a strong focus on safety and working conditions. CSDDD requires companies like CIF to identify, prevent and address human rights and environmental risk in their supply chains. This extends to steel production, transport and offshore construction partners. So non-compliance, as I just mentioned, may result in fines, civil claims, but also on reputational damage. So what are the takeaways? I summed it up here, very nice. If we look at CIF, there are a few takeaways for legal practice, which we can apply in different branches, of course. So first, under the CSRD, transparency is not optional anymore. It's really important. Second, under the CSDDD, the supply chain effectively becomes a liability chain. Companies are not only responsible for their own actions, but also for the actions of their suppliers and the human rights and environmental risk across their contractors and suppliers as well. Third, contracts themselves are turning into ESG instruments. And finally, we see growing liability for boards. Directors who fail to integrate ESG risks into corporate governance may face personal liability and responsibility. Thank you so much for your attention. I would like to hand over the mic to Olena. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. As a part of following up, I would like also to share this floor with the next respected panelist. And Oka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Elena, and thank you all for having me today. I also had some lovely slides to share, especially because I know many of you are lawyers and reading paper all day, all kind of text, and I thought, well, let's maybe, you don't have, you can open it, it's not necessary, but if you have them, it's also nice. Maybe it helps also at the end of the day to have a bit of a lighter pictures, share a bit of the context instead of just words. So, not sure if that's possible. And well, as I said, thanks for having me. I'm an ESG officer at SBR Nexus. I will explain in a minute what it is, but maybe I'll just start without a presentation. I can do it without, that's fine. I also like to walk around, if you don't mind. I had an opening slide showing a cactus. I think everybody knows a cactus. There you go. I think often ESG is seen as a topic as a cactus. It stinks if you touch it. It hardly gets any water or kind of resources. I think in many companies that's the case. And also it's not the plant people really kind of enjoy in their houses. It's like the one somewhere hidden at the back. It's not the one with all the colors that people appreciate. I think that's also a risk, because we just heard when it comes to the challenges, the kind of the burden it can bring to companies. But I think also when it comes to the opportunities, I'm a positive guy, I would like to say. I think we should not be the cactus. Actually, ESG should be your fertilizer for the many plants that you have, because as we just heard, it can be really beneficial to your business case, to your competitive advantage, and I think also ESG should definitely be a part of that. So that's why I thought, well, maybe we should take it from the cactus towards more becoming the fertilizer. A bit of background by myself. I'm a bit of an odd duck. I think many lawyers around. I'm just an urban planner, so there's much legislation in urban planning, but there's also a bit more the community and like the creative side of things. I did my master's here in Amsterdam, the University of Amsterdam, and I did my research in Shenzhen. Not sure people know, but it's like on the opposite side of Hong Kong in China, where it used to be in 1978 when Deng Xiaoping opened China up to the world. It used to be kind of the factory of the world. By now, it's kind of the Silicon Valley from the east almost. I think that's the highest density of tech organizations in China. It has many malls, many cool places to find your tech. But there, of course, you had an interesting thing when it comes to urban planning. And that's the first kind of message I would like to bring when it comes to challenges. And that's about context. My research was about the fact that you had lots of these industrial sites and they became abandoned. Industry moved more inwards to other cities that opened up. And suddenly all these industrial sites were left remote. And creative person, just like here you had in Berlin, for example, a lot of creativity, a lot of new people like to use those buildings. And at the same time, a lot of real estate developers said, well, we just need to kind of also provide new places, new houses. Let's just remove all those more creative spaces and turn them into property. Makes perfect sense. However, the livelihood of those environments, well, they kind of vanished. So the next stage, it turned out, maybe we can include the creativity as part of our process. So suddenly, within these really cool new high-rises, you would have like one floor somewhere hidden where creativity could take place, which is, of course, well, you cannot force creativity, I would like to say. So eventually, you now saw in Shenzhen, it was part of my research, areas where it was kind of way more integrated. And my message also when it comes to sustainability and ESG is really about being aware of the context. You cannot just throw sustainability and say, well, we are now sustainable. It's really about being aware of all those elements, and that will help you within your company. I moved on, because why do we care? I moved on to Arcadis. You might know, it's a large engineering consultancy from the Netherlands. It's based all across the globe. All kind of cool infrastructure projects, real estate projects, but also water projects. For example, New Orleans, when it was flooded, it was by Arcadis. They built a whole new system around there. And I started there, and we noticed after 2015, people might still know, in 2015, already 10 years ago, in Paris, we agreed that we would try to stick within those 2 degrees, or ideally 1.5 degrees Celsius when it comes to the change of temperature. Turns out, 10 years later, we have not really got to those goals as we initiated them in Paris, but I was working at Arcadis, and in that company you saw many governments really jumping on that target, trying to push the society towards where this was headed. However, you would also see the struggle with companies. So the private sector that Arcadis worked for, well, they showed less interest. We're still waiting for things to happen. I think we can still say that by now, lots of people are still waiting on what's going to happen and what's going to kind of be the real area of focus when it comes to what's necessary and what's nice to have. What's the must have, what's nice to have. But then in Arcadis, we said, well, we as a company, we really see the competitive advantage of being sustainable. So we said, well, how to overcome that challenge? It's a bit silly, but with a couple of youngsters, I was 25 back then, we just went to the entrance of our company and started handing out orange juice to the ones that traveled by train or by bike, instead of the ones that traveled by car, just to kind of start the culture. Next time, we did it with clients. We had a couple of clients that heard about this topic, said, oh, you guys are organizing this ESG week, well, that's interesting. Why not do this together and make a bit of a challenge ourselves? And why not turn it into projects? And before you know it, you see our lovely road-water combination. Before you know it, it really also transferred to new projects. Why not use sand from a project nearby to use for your new bridge? Why not really try to integrate and think about new business cases that reduce impact, that really try to be that provide really kind of the added value to your business, so both make money but also really care about what's happening to our planet. Well, I think there also, if culture doesn't really come from within employees, at least see where you can find that win-win situation. So that's really, I think everybody knows, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So of course afterwards the whole strategy was around this topic, but before you really saw the culture changing. And I think that's also a key aspect when it comes to overcoming these challenges related to ESG. By now you probably know that I'm more like an operational type of person than many, I think, maybe the issues that you would have on your desk, but at least I also hope to bring that to the table in discussion, because I think often in the discussions I've seen, it's ignored. I started working at Erics about 3 years ago, and all the legislation we just heard, all the directives from the EU suddenly landed on the desk of Erics. Erics is a large industrial distributor, so we have all kind of valves, pumps, motors, engines, all kind of cool things for offshore wind, but also for like oil companies, ASML, it was just in the room. Well, we also provided to them. And then you suddenly saw all these different elements coming in, CSRD, CBAM, when you import products within the EU, all kind of these things. And if you see at the top left corner, Sisyphus, it's a Greek mythology when it comes to pushing up a rock up a hill, and when you're almost there, it suddenly rolls back. And everybody felt a little bit like that burden, that task that they had. So I thought we should change that. I came in, and suddenly we had to reach out to all our suppliers, really dive into that scope 3, understanding all the different risks you have across the organization. And of course, as many people do, when you don't know what to do, you just throw money at the problem. So the result was that there was a dashboard built, shared with all suppliers, 20,000 suppliers, and suddenly you had to fill out all information about where does your product come from, what was it made, what's the material. Well, question to the room, do you think the response rate was above 40%? No? Maybe above 30? Above 20? Still nothing? No? No, we had a 9% response rate. So, of course, the idea was good, but it doesn't work. So, also there, of course, really the 80-20 rule applied. So really try to find out which are your key suppliers, work with them, and see how you really can install that when it comes more to the compliance side. Make sure that you go for good instead of going for perfect. First, try to find the key areas in your organization. So, with the suppliers, in the conversation, because we asked our people, the culture part had already taken place, but we asked our colleagues to really start having those conversations with suppliers, customers, and before you know it, many other things came on the table as well. A couple of suppliers said, well, since we're looking into those scope 3 elements as well, so we need to know all the different emissions related to our products, can you maybe also look, of course, as you had to, look into the logistics? Why not turn that into EV? Why do we still are driving around all these unnecessary routes across the company and across Europe? We can also improve that. Before you know it, we started this whole EV project. And while we were at it, another customer said, well, I'm surprised to see that all the filling material that you have as part of your packaging is all plastic. Can we not change that? Well, and I think there you saw, instead of really feeling this Sisyphus having to push that rock up the hill, making it small, testing, starting, scaling, that really helped. And I think also, of course, I had to work closely with our legal department, because they said, well, we still need to make sure that everything is validated and, of course, is in line with that we're measuring the right components. Still, it really brought a change because people recognized it and could really support it. And I think there you also saw really the change by starting small and scaling instead of trying to push that rock up the hill all at once. Having smaller rocks, well, it can be helpful. So where am I now? I just started at SBR Nexus a couple of months ago, and we were founded by the Dutch banks, and now also a lot of insurers have joined the initiative to see whether for the financial sector in the Netherlands, can we not make their lives, and also the lives of all the entrepreneurs here in the Netherlands and across Europe, easier? Because you often see that ING or Rabobank goes to your bakery and says, for your loan you need this and this and this data, we need this and this and this type of information. And next day, for another loan, another bank does exactly the same, but slightly different questions. And we are there kind of now trying to build that framework, and my role is to also see if you can do that for ESG. And ideally, even help those people in those roles, saying, well, we already know from the standard across the globe that if you're a bakery, normally your emissions will be A, B, and C. So currently, and I think that's mainly my key message also for here today, is that really trying to partner with all kind of sector associations that we currently have. We're looking into agricultural, transport, and also into real estate, really work with those parties, find public data and link that also to all kind of other suppliers, and see if you can really make people their life easier, because we know it's a burden to be looking into all those details. At the same time, it does provide you with a lot of clarity that also allows really cool discussions to have on all kind of business value. Really having the data, because if you don't know where you're headed and you don't have the basis to understand where you're going with all your activities and understand if you're becoming more sustainable because either you have to by law or you want to. You need to have the basis in place when it comes to data. And we are there now trying to build that really from the idea that you're building this triangle with all kind of different parties and try to be, well, scaling from there, but also really validating where possible. So, to close my, just in time, just to close my, my introduction of my kind of operational activities, I think sometimes we try to really aim with this topic for this whole in one. Suddenly we have to do it all at once, and it has to be perfect. And my understanding and idea of this is, well, let's just, well, go for good. Maybe we do it in 2 strokes instead of 1, but really try to keep pushing, because I think there's so many cool initiatives and companies are doing great things. So I think there's well, lots to still develop, but I think that can really be the way forward. So I hope this will also be something I can provide to you also as an idea for further on also your companies, and well, looking forward to the discussion.
Many thanks. From my perspective, I do have a legal background, but I was really, so my attention was completely catched by this guy with his operational background and with his insight, and I can assume that you were also highly motivated to make and take new challenges.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With a big pleasure, I would like to invite the following panelists to our discussion. Abrar.
Thank you. May I have that?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Actually, I'm too lazy to be standing for 15 minutes at the end of the session. Yeah, I have one, but it's okay if it's not ready.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, to attending last session at this day. But remember, last will last. And yeah, this is, I think, last session. And thank you for the organizer to organize this knowledgeable, valuable event. And let me please introduce myself. I'm Abrar Al-Shehri. I'm a partner lawyer at Dr. Mohammed Al-Muhanna Law Firm. Welcome, Dr. Mohammed, my boss here. Thank you for coming and supporting me here. Today's session is like ESG and compliance, as my colleague and another panelist described it. ESG, it's environmental, social, government. And nowadays it's like we will take it from 3 different perspectives. First perspective, international. Okay, sorry. This is me. Okay. So we will take from 3 different perspectives, and first one, international development, and the international overview of this section. And the second perspective is from Saudi Arabia perspective in ESG. And the third one, what is the key legal challenges in this area of law. And when we are seeing the international perspective, like for international level, ESG has moved from, as you mentioned, Nawal, from voluntary to mandatory legal obligations for the companies. And we will describe it from European Union and from the global overview also. And for example, for the European Union, you can it's a leading example with 3 major legislative pillars. First one is CSDDD, as you can see at the board, which is corporate sustainability, due diligence directive. And these obligations, it's like to obligate large companies and to monitor the supply chains and to ensure reporting or respecting the human resources or human rights and the environment. So it's more consists in human rights and the environment. And we can see also the CSRD, which is Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And this is required companies to disclose the sustainability and practicing with or in line with ESRS. ESRS, it's a standard, and it's a stand for European Sustainability Reporting Standard. The third one is EUDR, which is EU deforestation regulations. This is for ensuring the transparency of goods and to prevent deforestation. So these three, let's say, legislative pillars in European part. When we are seeing or exploring the global part, we can see the ISSB, which is International Sustainability Standards Board, and it's all of them under the IFRS Foundation. When we describe IFRS Foundation, we can see International Financial Reporting Standard Foundation. To mention something here, the ESRG or ESG, it's not all about environment and the social, it's also related to governance. So when we see financing or anything financial, it's going to be part of the ESG itself. And when we see IFRS, its subsidiaries, we have S1 and S2 as regulations. The S1, it's general requirements for disclosure of sustainability. It's going to be related to the financial information. And I think this is related to the company or to the corporate related for financial practices. So they will apply the ESG but in a financial disclosure. And S2, it's more related to the climate disclosure. So each regulation, it has a sub-regulations, let's say, if we can see it that way. And it's depend about the practices or of the company. And I forgot this one. Yes. And we can see here, like, also as you mentioned, Nawal, it's witnesses an increasing in strategic climate litigation and liability for greenwashing. Greenwashing as a term, as a related to ESG, it's mean misleading sustainability and claims, and this is a challenge in court actually. So now we are moving ESG from Saudi Arabia role and Saudi Arabia regional perspective as the other company in the world or any another countries. In Saudi Arabia we have a vision. I think it's a very notable vision, which is called 2030. And this vision, it's, let's say, reform all the regime and all the system, all the legal in the country to be combined, to be cumulative, leading to one vision, to enhance all the legal system. And it's not only in legal, and this is the good thing, that they are work on one plan together. They work on legislative system, the economic system, and the social system together in a line in one vision. And we can absolutely see that ESG, or let's say sustainability, it's a core of this national strategy. And it's reflecting actually in several initiatives. Some of them from the CMA, which is Capital Market Authority. They issued a sustainability disclosure guidelines for the companies, and especially who's listed company. And gradually, by the time, it's going to be mandatory for the listed company. It was at the end, it's going to be a mandatory. And also Saudi Exchange, they also launched a sustainability center to support companies, and this is very critical because this is the government role at ESG when they establish a center to, let's say, enhance the regulations, to also training the companies in ESG term and how they will apply it, how they will operate on it. And we also have NCEC, which is National Center for Environmental Compliance. This is enforces environmental regulations and requires environmental impact assessments for all companies, all practices. And also we have Zakat, Tax and Customs Authority. And this is to strengthen the financial transparency and enforces anti-money laundering AML regulations. ESG, or let's say governance, it's a part of ESG. And when it comes to a company which is related to the financial sector, transparency, it's one factor of ESG. So when it's the company, it's like transparent, that all the financial matter, it's gonna be applied to ESG. We have another national initiative like Saudi Green Initiative, SGI. We have another also initiative, it's called Middle East Green Initiative. All these updated regulations, Saudi Arabia, to support the concept of ESG. Okay, now what is the legal challenge? Okay. Okay, yeah, this part. Okay, now what is the legal challenge in ESG overall, like internationally? Despite the progresses that's happened now, the significant challenges remains, like the divergence between the European regulations, the US regulations, and the other regimes. And the greenwashing also, it's still a challenge, and it's hard, or let's say it's needed time to update the regulations to facing the greenwashing. Also the difficulty on monitoring global supply chain. You mentioned supply chain, and it's hard to trace the supply chains globally. Also locally in each jurisdiction, the legal challenge, it's going to be aligning the regulations, the international standards with the local regulations to be at least a small gap between them, and to repeat reforms with the local realities. To conclude this subject, it's environment, social, and governance is no longer voluntary, as we mentioned before. And we can see a lot of countries now enhancing their own regulations to update, to be aligned with the ESG, like we mentioned Saudi Arabia and what's happened there, to be aligned. And we as a lawyer, we have the role to make a bridge and to fill the gap between the international framework and between the local regulations, and protecting companies and protecting and visitors also. And thank you so much for your time listening to this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was really impressive with all this presentation. Sometimes it was like taking all our attention on the screen, but also on you and what you said. That was really important to know and to highlight. As I said, so ESG is quite a broad topic to discuss. That's always challenging and risky. That's always new, and you environmental, social, governmental issues across the globe. And each of you cannot imagine your life without those topics. So therefore, I would like to share this floor with our respected fellow panelists. Maybe you can advise us on some insights on ESG topic from your side. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. My name is Samit Gambhir. I'm from Uflex Limited, India. As I've given my introduction earlier, panel also, by the way. I think I don't know what to cover now because everything is covered by all these expert panelists now. ESG is, I think, it's one of the magical 3 words I have ever heard. Before that, it was "I love you" or "go to hell" or something like that. You know, my wife's favorite is "go to hell," mine is "I love you" types. But I think this is the most magical word I have ever heard. ESG. It is not simply a word, environment, social, or governance. It's an entire ecosystem, actually, if you really see. You know, everything is within this. You can't imagine anything out of it now, as of now. And you know, this is not like any other thing which bankers or you know, the financial institutions or the government started and then it didn't pick up. It actually picked up. It is actually something which is going to stay here, and we have been seeing our last 2 decades now, and particularly in the last 1 decade, tremendous growth in this area, the hot topic it has become, and awareness is so high in this area. Particularly the youngster, when we see, we really see. So, you know, when I talk about the lawyer's entry and the legal issues in the ESG, I'll come to that later. But before that, what I understand is that this has become a way of life, ESG. And believe me, it starts from you and I, frankly. We, you know, when this term was coined in 2004 by United States, United Nations, there was a report, you must be knowing that who cares when. There was a report published by United Nations, and most of the financial institutions or investors at that point of time backed that report. They say absolutely right, because till now we have been evaluating the companies only on the financial parameters. But that's not the way. There are many things other than the financial parameters also. And then they started, yes, this is the thing. Now we have to see and evaluate the organization on the non-financial parameters as well, right? And that's where it started, and it picked up slowly. Now, as a lawyer, what we see is it's not just a environment, social, and governance. It's a risk management tool today. You know, when we go into the deals, merger, acquisition, and all, the first thing comes to us is what are your score in ESG? How are you doing in ESG? What is your reporting into ESG? International funding, when we go, you know, everyone, my friends knows what is advising to the banks. Everyone now looking into the, what is your ESG or sustainability types, you know, reports and all. Of course, there's a lot of greenwashing as well. So that's where we compliance people also have to come in. We have to advise our board of directors. We have to advise our management as well. Greenwashing is not going to, you know, play further, because ultimately this is something which we have to adopt it, and we have adopted it now. I still remember, you know, there was a time, I'm just coming to the lawyers' issues later, there was a time when we were not aware of all these issues. Climate change, we have always been listening and hearing, but we were not very serious about it. Okay? And then governance, of course, for the last 20 years after Enron and all, there's a lot of issues and a lot of things on governance and all. Social, lot of issues on social and all, but this thing, when it came as an ecosystem, as an entire package for all of us, we really realized that this is what is required to us. Organizations have a responsibility, of course, because they have wealth and they can do a lot. But you and I individually can do a lot actually, and it starts from here only. And believe me, the ESG, entire ESG success of it, you and I. How do we start our day? Entire day you have a lot of ESG related things. How do you commute? What do you eat? What do you wear? What are your shopping habits? What are your other party habits, friends habits? These all kind of things which all relates to one small things. And actually when we start doing ourselves, automatically there will be improvement in this area. Already we are making a lot of improvement in this area. So I think one of the most important thing is that ESG is from within. You know, when we talk about the organization also, we say the culture of the organization is very important when you implement the ESG related things. I can print 1,000 numbers of reports giving a lot of sustainability issues, ESG. But the point is there something which is actually coming from the organization, or is there something in the race of ESG I'm trying to do? That's very important. So as a legal counsel, this is very important for all of us to understand and to see that we are not into that trap of greenwashing, because the ultimate objective is very, very good. Tomorrow, maybe another 10 years, 20 years down the line, we'll actually realize that what good we have done. Otherwise, after 10 years, 20 years, the world will not be a place to live actually, and that's what the prediction is. So therefore, when we talk about the legal system and the responsibility of lawyers and compliance people and legal counsel, I think it's our duty to advise to the board of directors that ESG is something is to be taken very seriously. ESG is something where the tone of the top is very, very important. ESG is something where the culture of your organization is very important. The board of directors has to take it very seriously. Of course, there are now CSR committees, ESG committees everywhere we see, and they are doing a good work. But the culture of the organization really plays a very important role. And when we talk about, the compliance system, I don't think so. The check the box compliance is not an ESG. Of course, we have to do the compliance for that also. In India, we don't have a standalone system for ESG or ESG rules and regulation or compliances. But as the co-panelist said, in Saudi Arabia and other countries also, the capital market regulator is SEBI. SEBI has, given a lot of, I would say, SEBI has given a lot of norms for the listed companies to comply with. So top 1,000 listed companies have to comply with the report. They have to come out with a report which is called Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. We call it BRSR. And that is to be complied by all the top 1,000 companies, listed company. In addition to that, there is another, wherein we have a lot of data of sustainability, renewable energy, we have data of environment, we have data of social governance, all kind of things are there. Then also there is something called BRSR core, wherein there is a limited or limited assurance on the KPIs. What exactly are you using, what KPI are you using actually. So when these reports go to the public, this report goes to the institutions, they really see it very seriously now, I'm telling you. I have seen many cases wherein when you implement a renewable energy plant or when you do something relating to ESG or something related to sustainability, which is good, the share price, gets up. Invariably we have seen that in market also. So I think investors are very smart. They are responding to these activities. They are actually looking into these papers. They actually know that, this is what is real, this is what is not for real, etc. So I think it's entire risk management, it's entire governance system of the organization wherein we have all the reporting. But at the same time, this has to be implemented all around. Now in India it is very limited to 1,000 listed companies only, but rest of the company will automatically get into the picture. You know why? Because if I have a policy of anti-corruption, for example, if I have a policy of some kind of a ESG governance policy, and I say that I have a policy for the vendor, so vendor will not get associated with me unless I comply with all these things. So all the small companies, MSMEs also get into the compliance system of this. So this is something which is going to change entire future of the organization. We are now focused on non-financial parameters much more than we were earlier. I still remember, even when I was talking to you and I was, so I still remember, when I was a kid, we were not very aware of all these things. We didn't have air conditioner in our house, but whenever the fan was on and I just gone out of my room, my father immediately turned and switched off the fan. So what are you doing? Just for the few rupees of electricity bill? He says, no, it's your habit. So the point here is that something has to be inculcated in your habits, that this is required not for today but for tomorrow at least. So now even the 5-year kid knows everything about it because they are much aware about it. They are taught everything in the schools. We were not. So therefore, environmental, social governance is the entire ecosystem, I would say. Social, of course, we have now seen a lot of upliftment for many areas, diversity, other things in the organization, and which are doing very, very well. So I think the entire ecosystem, entire risk management system, and entire compliance system of the ESG is one of the wonderful thing. And I think I'll stop here because most of the things have already been covered by more panelists. So thank you very much for the patient hearing here.
Thank you so much. At least from my perspective, now I know how to say I love you to my beloved one. Thank you so much for your stories. Thank you very much for your professional experience and also for raising this awareness about those topics. ESG, it's not about our commitments only, but that's also, as you said, about our habits that we shall start with ourselves and spread it all over. I'm not talking about business, I'm talking about everywhere. We should think about social impact, we should think about some governmental issues, but also about our future generations. That's the most important thing. And in this discussion up, I would like to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. So,
Sure.
Yeah. No, I will start with you, as you were the first panelist. You've been enumerating several regulations. If you can give us, maybe not all of us were following about their impact and their enforcement, so can you please give us more details about which of those European Union regulations are already enforced, which are still going to be enforced, and maybe some other details from your perspective. Thanks.
Thank you, Alena. So the CSRD is already in force. The companies already need to report. We have a commission, like we have a financial department, we have a compliance department who are more specialized in ESG. So they put all the departments together in a commission and we are reporting already. CIF already has also like sustainability goals and which you can apply within your company and then you will get an audit from the accountant. So that is already in place. Then we have the CSDDD, that is adopted, but all the member states within the EU needs to implement it in their national law. So likely it will be in 2026, but we all know that the member states can be a little bit later. So, but we are already preparing everything, so we will be already in place and comply with the international law. Thank you, Alena.
Thanks a lot. I will keep the same order as our speaker has. Okay, the next question for you. What role do you foresee for technical solution, as we are making this switch to technical side, to play a part in those challenges, and what kind of solutions do you see?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I really like the panel that we had before because I think also, of course, AI was mentioned and many people put all kind of their faith in that can be a quick fix or a solution for many of the ESG topics as well. I think what I noticed when I was still at Eric's, we were also, of course, working with the compliance department on how we could kind of solve the challenge around all the data from suppliers. And you see currently in the market, I think if you have ESG in your profile on LinkedIn, you will get targeted by a million people saying we have the one tool that can fix all your problems. And I think that's of course not how all of this works, but at the same time, it does provide you with smaller solutions to the problems that we have. So I think in the end, yes, there are all kinds of tools that help you either from an AI perspective or take some of the burden away when it comes to, well, otherwise you would have to have a lot of people in your workforce to kind of do all those supply chain due diligence initiatives and all those things for you. So I think there's definitely a technology component, but also, for example, as I currently see with our banks, there's so much publicly available data that you have out there, and there's so much more knowledge that we now have. Either by using your own AI agent or other tools that you have, and also currently for the banks, we're trying to find quick fixes to some parts of the problem by using a lot of solutions and technical, and I guess the market will further develop, and probably also when it comes to the whole software space, there will be some bigger companies that will really take a big chunk also when it comes to helping corporates. But I think also for smaller companies, there are lots of tools and solutions and also methods that can now help and also are out there that can make your lives a bit easier. So I think there's definitely a role to play. But at the same time, also coming back to the previous panel, AI can sometimes hallucinate a little bit and also have all kind of different, so I think there also really having your legal team, having the people in your in-house that can validate, really follow up and check, because I think we still not have really gotten to the place that we can fully trust on all those tools to provide us with the real answer, although people on LinkedIn will claim that they do. So I think that's still kind of a bit of a warning here.
Thank you so much. Considering that we have a small and big players on the market, how we can make sure that the interests of the small companies are also taken into account?
Yeah, I think that's currently also one of the things that we saw from the directives that were discussed before. Initially, the bar was lower in the EU, so many more companies had to apply and be compliant to all the new legislation. They were, I think, quite reluctant that they were no longer in scope. But I think there you still see the push from the bigger companies to be compliant there. I think if you look at the smaller companies, at least that I come across currently in my interaction with banks, many know their suppliers way better than bigger companies do. I'm surprised to see how well people know within their smaller community network how that works. I think in general, there's a bit of a challenge there. I'm also curious to hear the other perspectives there, but because I think one way those smaller companies do know their supply chains better, they know the company next door that helps them. At the same time, they suddenly have to comply to all kind of standardized frameworks from far away that do not really take that local context into account. And I think there sometimes, coming back more to the example I gave on the China situation with suddenly being a new building put in place and say, well, now you have to be creative in that area. I think that's sometimes also the challenge for smaller companies. They suddenly have to comply to a framework that's, well, we're not aware of, and of course some things can help. So we, for the banks, are building data sets that make it easier for them to do calculation. But at the same time, I think you see many struggling with all that administrative burden that they suddenly get from not just ESG, but I think also a lot of KYC, comply, all kind of other standards. And I think that's definitely a challenge. So interesting to hear if others.
Yeah, I would like to add something on that. I know that like SIF is a listed company, so it's a very big company. And the ESG and CS-DDD, CSRD, we will start, or not we, the Netherlands in this case will start with the big, large companies, and from that on they will go to the smaller companies to set an example how things should be, how you should report, because the accountants will be also looking at us. So, but in the meanwhile, so I'm very curious how this will be in the practice, because it's also for the smaller suppliers, as I just mentioned. So I'm also very curious how this will work in the real world.
Thank you so much. Maybe you can add also some advices how to keep that balance between the interests of small and big companies in this regard.
Well, I think like the smaller businesses, they have the contract with, for example, SIF. It's a big company. So if we will conduct a contract, we already have the clauses in our contract. So we will negotiate about that. And they will, of course, will call their lawyer about the ESG and get their advice about this. But we also have our code of conduct, which this should also be applying to. So I think from that part, smaller companies are affected. Yes, but like the formal line would be in phases like the large companies until the smaller. Would you like to add something on it?
No, absolutely, you're right.
Or just say I'm right.
You're right. I think I just wanted to say second you are right actually. And you know, you're right, because for example, we have 1,000 companies which are required to do a lot of reporting to the stock exchange or to the investors. But at the same time, when we go to, you know, what kind of vendors you have, you know, do you do the due diligence of your vendors, or do you do these kind of a due diligence for your suppliers? Do you see the diversity in your supplying? Do you see the, you know, they are not into child labor? So all kind of questions when these are there. So my duty is to check with my supplier or my vendor or my stakeholders to them. Now they are bound to comply with all these things because they want to work with me, right? So there's a cascading effect on all the people, stakeholders, employees, you know, everything. Everyone is into the ecosystem, I would say.
You're right.
Thank you.
I like this collaboration. Abrar, the question for you. What would you advise regarding the sustainability, compliance? What's your advice as a professional?
Actually, I advise the small businesses, or let's say small or medium-sized companies, to try to merge or insert ESG standards in their strategies from the earlier time, like from establishing the company. Don't wait until it's already structured, the company, and it's going to be big, and then you try to insert the standard of the ESG. Also, when you are a small company and planning to expand your businesses, it's going to affect that you are allowing the ESG standards in your company. It's going to make the investors more confident to invest in your businesses. Don't make it in earlier time or later stage. It's gonna be more difficult at that time. Also, when you are planning to expand your business worldwide or globally, opening a branch in another country, it's gonna be a major factors that you are applying ESG standards. So my advice, just to start as soon as you can to merge it and put it in your core strategies.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I fully agree with you, because once a person asked me, we were talking about the governance, and also one of the startup person who's, was the startup guy, who asked me that when should we start complying with all the, when should we start looking for the compliances, ESG, etc. I said from the day one, you're right, because what will happen is, now he was very adamant. He says, if I am a startup owner, I am not a regular businessman. If I am taking a lot of risk, if I am not challenging the compliance, what kind of a risk I am taking that? My startup is, that means I am challenging the status quo. I am challenging the entire ecosystem, and I am taking a lot of risk in terms of doing something which may or may not succeed. I said, but you're right. But look at the data. 90 out of the 100 startup fails, and some of the reason could be, because of the governance and compliance and other things also. So I think better you start the day one, as she's saying. It's always better.
Yeah, that's wrong. To be well prepared.
Definitely, although things are to be taken into consideration before you're starting your business, so they're vital and the fundamental issues to be really taken into account. Abrar, maybe one more question from my side as well. Now we are currently facing some challenges, but also we are looking forward what kind of development those issues may have in, let's say, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and so forth. So what's your point of view? What's your overview of the upcoming changes?
For upcoming changes from, let's start from governmental stage. And the government, I think it has their own role to enhance ESG standard. For example, establishing a center to training the companies to apply ESG standards. Also trying to fill the gap between, as we mentioned before, the gap between the international standards and the local standards in the same jurisdiction. It's gonna be more. It's hard to be unified in all countries. I think it's very hard because social it's different, the culture is different, the environment itself is different. But at least there is a minimum of standards. It should be applicable worldwide. So. That minimum, it should be enhanced and fill the gap between them. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Of course.
And I think what we just heard also from the previous panel kind of introductions or talks, that I noticed that we have seen some changes when it comes to the kind of the legislation and the frameworks that are being provided. But at the same time, I think you see society, but also really companies just going ahead. And I think when it comes to the next 12, 18 months, and I'm also really curious what will come out of the climate week in New York, for example, but also in the EU. I think it's, unfortunately, initially I think governments were really pushing this, but suddenly they're kind of we're running behind, and I think companies are already seeing that it has business value, it has potential, it provides stock share increases, so people see really the opportunity. And now I think it's really up to the legislation part from all the governments to really catch up, but also really provide clarity, because I think, for example, my old company, Arcadis, we were trying to be ahead, and last week there was this in the Dutch Financial Times, an interview with the new CEO. He said, well, he put so much money and effort into all these requirements, and we're already doing really well, but at the same time we had to report, and now it's suddenly not needed, or it's postponed, and I think there's definitely a need for some of the frameworks to catch up, because I think that's not really helping businesses, because I think businesses really want to move into the direction, really see the potential, and I've already kind of adopted all those standards as part of their business processes.
Thank you so much. And one legal joke. So, what the favorite exercise might have ESG lawyer? Of course, due diligence. So be careful, be aware about the challenges. Keep in mind that it's something that should be done for yesterday, not for tomorrow. We should take that with the highest priority. And I would like to express my great attitude and my gratefulness and my respect to all of our panelists who raised all those issues from different perspectives with their experience, knowledge, and from different angles on the same issue. And I'm sure that lots of you are also experts in their own fields. So thanks a lot for having us today on this panel discussion, and we hope to see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Oh, there's any question. You're sleeping now.
Everybody's gone.
People think about the exercise too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And that was a very insightful presentation. Mine has to do with universal standardization. I understand that with ESG, there are different standards. We have the national standard, we have the regional standard. And we are in a global world where ESG has become very important. And people across the globe are signing different agreements with clauses that are expected to be enforced. We are talking about issues of greenwashing and then breaches. Now, if you have somebody from an European region and somebody from Africa signing a contract, and there is a clause there, maybe the clause that has been inserted may be relevant to the one from EU, but the one from Africa, that clause may not be relevant. And the one from EU may say that it amounts to greenwashing because that particular clause is perceived in a different perspective. We are all aware that with sustainability goals, it's always the best to have a national standard. And that is why with SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations have unified the goals. From your perspective, what do you think would be the best approach to ensuring that we have this universal standard? Thank you.
No, I think, yeah. Well, thank you for your question. That is why it's one of the challenges we are going to face, or we are facing already. If you're asking me, I think you should always go for the most stringest clause, because I think ESG is like, from a helicopter view, there are some aspects which we should apply. And I think if you're going for the stringest clause, you will always do it good, I can imagine. And also if you're doing it as a party, like from the EU and, for example, Africa, if the intention is good and you also get advice from a lawyer from Africa, because if I'm talking about myself, I'm not familiar with the African law, so I would definitely call a lawyer in Africa and ask them how the ESG regulation is over there, and then try to combine those two in the most stringest form and put that in a clause. That is how I would approach it.
Fully agree.
Thank you.
No, so we
Sorry,
definitely face this problem day on day out basis. Whenever we do international contracts with many countries, these kind of issues always comes up. The point is that every contract is a unique contract. So every time you have to apply, different approach, or every time you have to apply a approach in a different way. But yeah, you're right. You have to understand that your responsibility or your compliance issues, of course, you should know. But when we are talking about the other countries' compliance issues or social issues or ESG related issues, it's always better to do exchange of words or communication between the two. Understand, this is for us. This is a good for us to understand the other perspectives also. So it's always good to understand the things. Talk to the local lawyer, as she said. Understand what is the must, what is not must, what can be negotiated, what cannot be negotiated, and all. And these are the problems which keep on coming because we don't have any standard. You're right. That's the biggest problem in ESG, that there is no standardized format for any kind of a thing. So I think this is a learning. I think this is another learning, and this is the only way you can do it. Depend on contract to contract and business to business, actually.
I hope this answers your question.
From my perspective, I would also add that we are always looking back on some reasonability of those limits, of those measures, etc. And also, we are looking how to substantiate the use or non-use of those matters. So, I mean, always to have some grounds, not only legal, but also some reasonable grounds to use those measures. Any more questions?